it does hurt, honestly. But White's position looks like it hurts as well.
Yeah, this is now this is gonna hurt. That's the problem with a blockade like this, right? It's not supported by pawns, and knight f8 is a really nice move. That's a good exercise to give to somebody. Knight f8, knight g6, and then the bishop has no good squares. Maybe bishop f6. Maybe bishop f6.
Wait, actually, so instead of c4, let's say we're a little calmer at the beginning. So we play knight back to f1. Another retreating move, but I'm trying to meet knight g6 with bishop to g3. So I know you're attacking me. I get it.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Masya Allah. Okay, sekarang tengah apa? Kita tengah live Insya Allah live untuk Olympiad. We are live now for Olympiad Chess 2021. Okay. Maybe soon. 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Sambung.
Just going to hold up for the next couple of moves at least.
Chess is a balance, right? It's a very delicate balance of trying to create our own threat and stopping our opponents. In this particular case, Alexandra decides to stop her opponent's immediate threat of pawn to c4, but that gives up her intentions on the king side because of this blockade. Now, she can follow it up with a bishop e7 type move to trade the bishops, then get rid of the blockade. Although maybe just getting rid of the bishops is exactly what White wants, saying your attack will not be so powerful.
Yeah, it won't be crushing or anything. But obviously now, as you said, White has a hard time preparing c4. So I think the position has kind of calmed down a little bit. Just a few moves ago, we thought that one side could checkmate the other. Here, we're not going to see any mates in the next couple of moves. Maybe even the battle will transform into a more positional one, as Black will play king b8. White also does not have to worry about any immediate threat after h4 knight f1. So we'll keep an eye on the way this game is going. Time situation is in Alexander's favor, but I don't think White's position is bad here.
No, in fact, it's improving by the move. It feels easier to play by the turn for White, so we'll see how this one goes. Why don't we go to a different board? Do you have any in mind, Danya, or should I pick?
No, I'm never going to trust you to pick a game to look at. It's a very treacherous choice. Well, I was looking at the Shabalova game and contemplating a sacrifice on h6 here. And I came to the conclusion that it's probably not dangerous. This is some sort of a King's Indian attack kind of position. Currently, White is down a pawn.
Oh,
what should be Black's response to the sacrifice?
I was looking at the sacrifice and the evaluation, not sure where to land, but I feel like White, in many ways, has to take on h6 because you just lost a pawn on c4. White had double pawns there, and Black's last move was d5 takes c4. So if you don't take on h6, you're just down a pawn and much worse. So not that you should go all in and lose immediately, right? Because bishop takes h6 could be terrible. But bishop takes h6. How is Black getting enough defenders over to defend the king? I guess the e5 pawn being loose is the big issue, as you just showed.
Yeah, knight takes e5 could be nasty. And then if White plays knight g5, Black has to take. Otherwise, she's going to get checkmated. Queen takes g5 check. And probably there's an important detail here, knight g6. And if White plays h5, trying to pick off the knight and win back the piece that was sacrificed, well, you see the eval bar is not as convincing now as it was. So
Queen e5, I guess.
Queen e5, and then I have to drop the queen to g4.
Is there pawn takes b3, bishop e2? I'm trying to figure out how
this works.
works.
Nice.
I'm not
Takes. Whoop. B takes f7.
Yes, just take it.
Wow, caveman style. Rook d7, check, king e8. And everything hangs. Queen a4, b5. Or this rook hangs now. The wheels come off the attack here.
Yeah, you can only give up so much material.
Wow.
White king would be checkmated. But it is helpful to have the evaluation bar show you that the position is still good for Black. But it just seems like White is playing hope chess by taking on h6 and trying to make everything work there.
True. But it appears that, as you said, Polina is in a bit of a path of no return. First of all, she's got 4 minutes. And what often happens is when you spend this long contemplating a sacrifice, even if you become less and less convinced, often you end up going for it just because of the incredible sunk cost that's involved, right? You don't want to think about something. We've all had that experience. Think about something for 15 minutes, and then not going for it is pretty excruciating.
But they tell us it's a fallacy, right? So you can't think of it like that.
The sunk cost fallacy, that's right. I think of it that way nonetheless. But what else does white do? Because black wants to go rook. Ooh, rook e1. Okay, so she's definitely preparing to sacrifice. And the reason is that the rook wants to come to e4. Black needs to be very careful here as well.
And it's funny because if you take on b3, that also allows white to play a takes b3, hitting the bishop on a6 with tempo. So you're recapturing, hitting the bishop, and then you're going forward bishop takes h6. So I do not like getting greedy and just saying I'm going to maintain my extra pawn. Instead, I like to move knight to b4 down here because I want that huge fork on the c2 square. And if not for that knight jump, I'm going to d5, bringing my knight to attack the queen and the bishop. I think knight b4, if it doesn't fall victim to bishop takes h6, should be a good move.
I mean, what if I go nuts? Bishop takes h6, and if knight takes e2, queen f4. I contend that this is not as clear as the eval bar is making it out to be. Maybe, in fact, black should play rook fd8 here. And prepare to move the bishop back. I don't know.
Yeah, that's getting like ultra solid and safe there. But the eval bar says knight takes c2 should be good for black. But again, as you're saying, the players, not that much time on the clock. You think that the bishop and the queen and that knight will all join in the attack. Maybe that rook on e1 will slide to e4 at some point. So there is a lot to figure out for Gall, but she has more time than does her opponent.
Or will she have the gall to take on c2 here? I hear stony silence.
Oh, yeah. You know, I was waiting for you to make your first punt of the day, your first big one, and there it was.
Yeah, I was checking whether Katerina had any lag, but no. As I switch to her game. Lagno playing white against Lazarne Vaida.
I quit live on the show here.
You just, like the news anchor, the disgruntled news anchor, just take your mic off, take your headphones off, storm out of the hall.
Well, I'm glad we did switch over to the game because it's important to look at all games here. And the position at first glance, I thought white would be a ton better, but then I see the eval bar saying it's really not that big of a deal because black has this isolated pawn on e5. That should be an advantage for white. I guess black's activity makes up for the pawn structure. Yeah,
that knight could come out to f4. The pawn is very well defended. That knight on c6 isn't easy to dislodge. Obviously, white does have this important blockading square on e4. But yeah, black is surprisingly solid here. And this is really interesting. I think two of Team Hungary's players went for the relatively rare Nimzovich Sicilian. We see this in this game, and we saw that also in the Shuvalova game. So this could be a case of this happens not so uncommonly, a team preparing an opening. It's sometimes ended in tragedy if that opening is dubious, as in the very famous Russia-Argentina match from the 1950s, where Team Argentina prepared a Najdorf line that was, in that time relatively unknown. But of course, Russia had refuted it probably, 30 years prior when they were all babies. So
yeah, it is dangerous, but these players clearly fans of Shakir Mamedyarov, who is the highest rated player to play this Sicilian line, and it's working out well for the Hungarian team on this board with all the activity. It seems like black should be doing just fine, although it's not clear because only 3 pawns per side have been traded. It's not exactly obvious what the next move should be for either side. And with 6 minutes remaining for white and under 4 minutes for black, that's not an easy thing to figure out here. It's really a lot to consider.
And add to that, I think there's some bad news on, some of the top boards. First of all, this game is probably going to end in a draw, which I think all things considered is a solid result for Dubov. I mean, that knight's going to come back to b4. This seems like it's sort of just liquidated. And what's even more concerning, at least, I don't know, maybe if we look deeper, I'll change my mind. A game we haven't looked at, Kozak-Esipenko, it appears that white has just blundered. So this was the position on the board. It was just totally fine for white. And Kozak lost his patience. He goes g5 and he blunders this move, rook g6. All of a sudden, the rook is pinned. He's going to lose the g5 pawn. And to add to that, that pawn's going to park itself on g4, where it's going to be very well protected by the bishop. I think white's worse now.
I completely agree. That looked like a move that you rush a decision, hoping that I'm playing for the win here. My team needs me to win. And then rook g6 happens. Like, how could I miss that move? And the reason why we often miss moves like that, even at the super strong level that these players are at, is that there was a pawn in f6. So I really think that g5. You think, oh, it's h takes g5, h6, g5.
Yeah,
because you normally want to capture
toward the center.
Exactly. I should jinx you, but I won't because I need you.
No, I
as my
interrupted you.
But yeah, so you capture away from the center, and then the rook slides to a square it previously could not get to. So that's a huge oversight by Kozak here. And as you said, black should be happy for now, although white has the strong pawns in the center, and black needs to deal with those for the rest of the game.
Yeah, and there comes rook f1, h takes g5. Kozak also spent a very long time. File.
Yeah. So sorry to cut you up there, but I just
no.
You know, if you take the G pawn, well, there are two of them, but the G7 pawn takes and protects its buddy on G5, and if you don't take it, as Donnie was saying, black gets the F file. This is just it. And G4 is still in the picture. You can bring the other rook to F8 and get your rook to F3 with check or something like that. I don't see how white can try to win this game. It seems like black is doing more than fine.
Agreed. And I have a breaking news alert for you. It appears that Lazarne Vaida's position has deteriorated substantially. In fact, she can just resign here. Lagno, wow, what a turnaround. We looked at the position. It was a little shaky for black, but certainly not that bad. Just to walk you through what happened, queen g6 allowed this queen to position itself on f3. Vaida going knight d4, changing the structure, but she opens the e file and this move bishop f5. Super nasty. Look at all the pressure on black's pieces. And queen b6 was just, I think, an outright blunder, although maybe the position was already bad. Boom. Taking on f7, and now look at black's king. All alone against white's entire army. This is dead loss for black.
Yeah, wow, what an amazing sequence of events there, or a tragic one for the Hungarian squad. I think at that moment after bishop f5, there's just one choice. You need to see the tactic of bishop takes h7 check, so you probably had to bring your queen at that point to h5, but that looks iffy as well. Your queen might get trapped over there after pawn to g4 as you're showing, so it won't get trapped, I don't think, but it does look scary.
I think queen b6 was sort of a panicked reaction, and even here, I think the queen had to come back to g6, and she had to take an endgame of pawn down. Now, it's lost because of this rook e4 idea. I mean, if rook d6, then rook e4, and rook h4 is entirely unstoppable. And there's no other squares because then you're going to lose the knight. So it's over. That's going to be a big win for Team Russia. Katerina Lagno, who, of course, was the favorite this game, but, you know, outlasting her opponent in that very tense position and pouncing on the opportunity when it arrives.
And I guess the main hope for Hungary still remains for Gall against on that board there, because she remains up a pawn. If bishop takes h6 is not happening. There's a bishop on f8. So what do you think that white should do to create some problems for black, or just try to hold the balance? What would you do?
Well, Polina is, I think, doing what she has to do. She's going after the c4 pawn. And if white can take it, then white's still going to be worse. I mean, there's no doubt that, you know, white's going to be worse for the next couple of moves, but she's going to have better chances to hold. Queen c6 by Gall. I was thinking about an idea like this, just switching your bishop and your queen to the long diagonal to create threats. And how should white deal with this? Well, if bc, you might run into bishop b7. I guess you can play f3. There are some sacks on d2 hanging in the air. I don't see anything concrete, though.
Yeah, unfortunately, that, you know, it seems really tempting for black to just go for that. And, looks like we might see something like that in this game. And also, b takes c4, while bishop b7 is an option, it also frees up the a4 square for the queen to start poking at that c4 pawn. So black should just be doing well here, as the king is safe, and the queen side and the d file are both Galls for the taking.
Yeah, so now a decision has to be made. bc4 has been played. Does Gall fight for, essentially checkmate on this diagonal, or does she go after the c4 pawn? I like the move queen a4 probably more, because after bishop okay.
Donnie, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt.
No.
Huge result. Yeah, Artemiev loses.
You were right on the money.
Oh
wow, and look at that final position. Now, it didn't seem like the position was clear up until the very end. He has an active rook, but he blunders. This is not an easy blunder to see, but what do I always say? Loose pieces drop off. Loose piece undefended. Loose piece undefended. Exposed. Boom. Attacking the rook. Attacking c1. It's a fork. I call it forking a fork. You're threatening the rook and you're threatening a fork. Artemiev tries to defend both rooks at the same time, but now the queen is overloaded. h6, the final move of the game. The queen is unable to preserve its defense of both rooks. Unbelievable 27 moves defeating Artemiev with black.
Did not expect that, but what we were talking about is why do you put a player like Glidori in there? Artemiev was playing in a style that was unfamiliar to me and probably unfamiliar to himself. It really did not feel like from the very early stages he got into the type of position he wanted, and he goes down and he loses on that board. So now it's 1-1 because Katerina Lachenau did win her game. We saw that she was about to deliver in checkmate. Instead of being checkmated, it looks like Vaida gave up all her pieces, and so Lachenau wins, but Artemiev loses.
Yeah, that's huge. And I'm looking at this Banush game. I just want to figure out whose move it is. Okay, it's black to move. Because if it was white to move here, then white would have captured and gone bishop c5. As it stands, I think Dubov can take and go rook b5. And and his idea is bishop b8, I guess. But white's got to be careful. If black extricates his king, this is incredibly nasty. This is actually what happened.
Wow. Yeah, so you're right. In bishop b8, rook d5, covering both of the squares that bishop's been trying to get onto because there's a pin on the last rank trying to exploit that pin. No way to do so. I think that white should be able to hold this game, even though you're down a pawn. Bishops are the same color.
I don't
the
know.
Pawns are all on the same side of the board. It is worse. No doubt about that. But white, with accurate play, should be able to hold. Very different saying that versus playing it because you only have 2 minutes remaining.
And another board that seems to be going in black's favor, Alexandra's position, is a very interesting one. Okay, so this is currently the position on the board. White's got this passer on g5. That's a very dangerous. But I thought that maybe Alexandra could have captured on g4 and basically played for 2 results. I guess she determined that that was too drawish. Okay. Now what's going on here?
I would stop the pawn from going to g6 by playing knight e7 just to keep that pawn on the g5 square farther away from promotion, and then do what you were saying. Go for the queen side. Not only can black play king b4 and king takes a4, but there could be a time where black plays a5 and then just plays pawn to b5, just rushing the pawn down. We talk about this often, not about quantity of pawns, about the quality. White has the most advanced pawn right now, but in just a couple moves, a5 followed by b5, that pawn is free to sprint to the other side.
No, you're absolutely right. You want to accelerate the pace of your pawns. Knight e7, king h5 has happened. Practically speaking, this is an incredibly hard position to defend. You've got a minute on the clock. And very often what it boils down to is the fact that you need to find exactly the right maneuvers with your knight. And you need, that's hard to find even with 20 minutes on the clock. So I feel like this is big time danger for Huang.
And honestly, Russia might need this victory because as I'm looking across the 4 boards, that game between Gall and Paulina there on the they drew their first game, and now they're here, and black is just cruising, I think, Danya. And I'm looking at the position here. 8 seconds left for white, pretty much, and down on time there, and it just seems like everything's going black's way.
This is the position on the board. Now, Shabalova has managed to arrange her pieces quite nicely on the king side, and now there's ideas like knight f6 hanging in the air. So I wouldn't be too confident black's position here. But yeah, the time situation, also black has 20 seconds, so it's a mutual time scramble. Anything could happen. I'm going to call a win for white here. I feel like something's going to happen to black's king side.
Well, we're in disagreement because look at that queen on c6 pinning the knight on e4. You want to make some kind of knight jump, as you were talking about, some kind of inroads against the black king. But with the queen and bishop lined up, that knight is stuck, and black is starting to push those queenside pawns.
Right. No, you're right. You're definitely right that objectively white has nothing. I completely agree. I just felt like, okay, maybe I'm imagining ghosts. I guess I am, because you can't even approach black's king. That bishop on f8 is a hero.
It is.
And I feel like Paulina should maybe even grab that pawn on h6 and go knight f6 and try to, make things go boom and hope for the best. But she seems to be in complete queen f3 now, she's pinning herself. I think she still wants to grab the pawn on h6, but she's trying to find the best way to do that. as black simply advances her pawns.
Yeah, and they keep going, it seems, and
Nice.
B3. So if queen takes B3, what's the follow-up? Just knight takes E5, maybe?
I guess so. Yeah, knight E5 and knight G4. Well, we're about to find out. Okay. I guess knight E5 is the best because...
Oh.
Whoa. But I didn't think this worked after queen E3. For instance.
Queen E3 defends everything.
This is the danger. Oh, wait. Knight takes D2 is even possible, but...
Queen E3, just everything is guarded. And in this endgame, black is still slightly better because white's pawns are more advanced. So we like advanced pawns early stages because we restrict our... going on.
Yeah, the other games are going on. It's going to be very close in the Juan Castaño game. That one, it might be a draw. It probably is a draw, but who knows? This is the position on the board right now. And it's hard to play for both sides because Alexandra has to decide which pawn she's pushing. Is she going to move the king and push the A pawn, or is she going to push the B pawn? Now, generally, Robert, the best pawn to push against the knight is the A pawn. That's the knight. Knights are terrible at stopping corner passers.
They are. They're really bad because the knight just gets restricted, and so they're not going to be able to guard the furthermost pawn. So right now, it looks like a position that black should be winning, but I think you probably have to be extremely accurate. Otherwise, the game just ends in a draw because the knight can sacrifice for one pawn while the king gets the other.
Yeah, and another game that's looking concerning for Hungary, Dubov's pulling all sorts of shenanigans against Banush, trying to trick him, and the situation is very concerning for the Hungarian player. He's still down a pawn, and I feel like we should see updates here very shortly, but this is a position you can absolutely lose, because if you take on F5, then there's King G6, and apparently there's a draw here. Can you go Rook F1? Oh, you can go like this, and black's going to be forced to trade rooks. Amazing idea.
Yeah, you know why I always say bishop, corner pawn, the corner square doesn't work. So trading the rooks would end the game as an immediate draw, despite black being up a bishop.
It's very easy to throw this out. Just if you're in time pressure, like, oh well, black extricates the bishop, but as you always say, you have to check the corner. That gives you tremendous power if the pawn is the wrong color.
Wow.
Okay, so I feel like moves should have been played here.
Yeah, probably, because they're in time trouble, so moves are going on all the boards, honestly. I'm just looking at the final three games. It's 1.5, 1.5 right now, and Hungary needs to find a victory on some board. I just don't think they're getting it.
Yeah, and
yeah, many
no,
moves
this is
have been made from here as well, so maybe a refresh is necessary.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, I'm trying. It's
not all the moves coming in at the same time. But a reminder to everybody that after this match is done, if we don't go to tiebreaks, we will have Kazakhstan versus Team USA starting very shortly, honestly, in 20 minutes from now. So you will not want to go anywhere even when this match concludes.
Yeah, definitely. As we're trying to get the moves that have been played here. Yeah, this is going to come down to the wire for sure.
Well, I am seeing some progress for Russia. Looks like Alexander Kostyanyuk took that one there against her opponent Huang, the grandmaster from Hungary. So the chess queen leading Russia to the semifinals. I think that at this point it's clear with Dubov, unless he loses internet connection.
Unless he loses, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this is
and Shavalova's not going to lose that. So, but even if she does, it's still going to be a win. So Kostyanyuk has officially won, right?
She has officially won, yes.
Okay.
So Russia is making their way through.
Yeah. So Kostyanyuk wins this position. there's a bit of an issue with the moves, but we know for a fact that you won. And yeah, Dubov is not losing this. I think the Wi-Fi in their playing hall, I'm sure, was double and triple checked to be reliable. Yeah, right. Because Russia's all playing from the same place. Right. They're playing from their chess club in Moscow.
I see it. Dubov has drawn his game, so Russia officially is through, because even if Hungary somehow wins on the last between Gall and Shuvalova there, and they actually have just agreed to draw, it seems. So the results are in. Mm-hmm. Russia wins this one 3.5, 2.5, just like the first part of the match. So they move to the semifinals. Danya, a really impressive showing by the Russian squad. Despite Artemiev's loss, the rest of the team gathered together and were able to help secure match victory.
Yeah, and Hungary is going to keep their heads up high. They were significantly outrated. They had a lot of bright spots in round one. In the first match, Erdos beating Dubov, here Gladura beating Artemiev, both with the black pieces. So if some of the things, some of the 50-50 positions went their way, we might be seeing a tiebreaker right now. So very, very good effort by Hungary. But in the end, Russia is Russia. They've got a team of stalwarts of incredibly experienced players, and they come together and score an important victory. So impressive stuff by Team Russia once again.
For sure. Well, Russia moves on to the semifinals. That is probably no surprise to the chess community, because Russia is always so good. They have so many talented players, some of whom are not even playing here, because the likes of Sergei Karyakin, Jan Nepomniachtchi, they're playing in Norway chess, and many other top Russian players not taking part, but their team remains strong. That's the benefit of having such depth. And speaking of depth, Danya, we'll get to it in a bit, but Team USA, their superstars not showing up for the team. They were busy playing in the 960 event and other prior commitments, but they still have Jeffrey Jean, Ray Robson, Dariusz Svirich, and that's really the nice thing when you have a luxury of choice.
Yeah, it's it's like the 2016 Golden State Warriors. The entire bench was like an all-star team in its own right. So they are nothing to sneeze at. A very strong team, and I'm so excited. USA against Kazakhstan, two incredibly strong teams battling it out. We're going to have that for you very soon.
Yes, so we're going to go on a short break, but when we return, it will be Kazakhstan, it will be USA to determine the final spot in the semifinals of the FIDE Online Olympiad.
Ha. Yo, assalamualaikum.
Daniel Naroditsky and I are back, ready for the fourth and final quarterfinal matchup between USA and Kazakhstan. Daniel, we've had three exciting matches to this point, only one of which went to tiebreaks. What do you think is going to happen as we approach USA versus Kazakhstan?
Gosh, well, you're putting me in a difficult position as usual. Two incredibly strong teams, and Kazakhstan was just a tour. They put together a tour de force kind of performance in the preliminary stage. So obviously, the U.S. has more names that are probably going to be familiar to the viewers, but I think it's going to be a very close match. I think that there's a pretty high chance that it goes into tiebreaks. I can absolutely see that happening.
Wow, I guess that makes sense. If you feel the match is close, that they'll split in the rapid time trial before getting to the tiebreaks. And what I'm most impressed about when I look at the Kazakh team is their women boards. Is they have two superstar women in Abdumalik and in Sabakasova. So they're great, and they also have Asabayeva as their junior women board. So it's just super strong players left and right for the Kazakh team. But USA, they've got some good players of their own, do they not?
Well, they've got some amateur. I mean, Jeffrey Zhang. I wouldn't necessarily call them good. Ray Robson. They're okay. They're all right. Yeah, of course. They're absolute beasts and on all boards. And I'm, obviously Jeffrey, Ray, they're going to have to do some of the heavy lifting. I think that it's going to be very dangerous for U.S. on the boards that feature Abdumalik and Sadvakasova. They're incredibly strong, and they've been doing some of the heavy lifting for Kazakhstan.
They have indeed, and of course, Kazakhstan has Rinat Jumabayev, who is now well known after knocking out Fabi Slayer exactly in the FIDE World Cup. So Jumabayev, board one, some strong women players throughout. So I'm really liking that team. The makeup of the team is super strong.
Good.
Team USA, we expect them to be strong. And
tengah live ni chess.
I really feel like this is a true toss.
That's why I think
Chess Olympiad. Dah tak main, tengok je.
We could even see both of these.
Sambil-sambil tengok SPAI.
Being reached that way, although that's
tengok live chess kali. Ni GM main ni. Olympiad.
Such a superstar in America.
Kalau nak tengok live trading dekat sini. Kalau nak tengok live YouTube, kalau nak tengok live trading dekat dalam Discord. Okay, kalau nak tengok live YouTube dekat YouTube lah. Lucky Shot Superman. Nanti nampak lah kawin punya ni chess. Siapa nak tengok chess, tengok chess.
Dekat YouTube ada live chess
kau tengah buat live chess lah sekarang ni.
A Wonder Liang, who is a very good rapid player. He plays pretty fast, and he puts a lot of practical pressure on his opponents. And I think Talia Serrano, who is also very strong, but they have their work cut out for them. That's for sure.
Well, we actually have all of the U.S. players on camera as they get ready for the games. It should begin soon, so it's cool to see that. And honestly, it's a lineup I wasn't quite expecting. We'll pull it up eventually, but I'm just looking at the faces. Danya, no Ray Robson in this one.
No Ray Robson. Yeah, that's interesting. Now, has he played especially badly in the? I haven't been following the individual results of the players. But maybe it's just, it's a hard choice between Ray and Darius.
When you're spoiled for choice, it is difficult, right? That's why it's called spoiled. You just don't know who to choose in a given moment. It could be a colors thing. You want one player with the white pieces, one player with the black pieces. But I think what's clear is you leave Jeffrey Zhang in no matter what color he's going to get.
Yeah, and I can say from my experience playing the 2015 World Team Championship that when you're left out of a match, it's easy to get annoyed and think that it's because your captain doesn't have faith in you. But it's absolutely usually not like that. And I think it's always important to be a team player, especially when you're in an in-person event like this, and be supportive. If you're left out or subbed out, you want to help the other players prepare. That's sort of the tradition.
That's right. And we see some moves played in the game between Jumabayev and Jeffrey Chong, both players starting out the game quickly. It was a Queen's Gambit accepted. And this last move played rook to e1 by Jumabayev. That catches me off guard, Danya, because if we just go back a half turn as we exit the Queen's Gambit accepted early stages, isn't a4 a common move here to stop black? And if not for a4, I think you can also play this line where you take on c5 and trade queen. So rook e1 seems a little bit not odd, but unique to me.
Yeah, I'm looking at the chess.com openings explorer just to see how common these moves are. And you're right, a4 is the most common. D takes c5 is also playable, but rook e1 is exceedingly rare. And it doesn't look good, but obviously I think if you take a closer look, perhaps White's preparing e4. And nowadays with, Leela and Stockfish suggesting all sorts of ideas, nothing is off the table, Robert. I mean, that's what makes a lot of openings, that's what's breathed new life into them, is these kinds of moves.
That's right. Just because it hasn't been played before or is not played much does not mean it's a bad move. It just isn't the topical choice. So we will bring up all 6 USA players just to see how they're looking, if they're nervous. They're very focused. That's what they are.
Yeah, all of them. They're not moving much. I think some players, I'm definitely of the category of player. If I'm playing an online game, I'm all over my room. I'm moving from side to side. I'm rocking back and forth, but you see these players just locked in deep concentration. That's what we love to see.
That's right. And we'll see how their play, if it does the talking for them. They're obviously just sitting and focused, not really talking in general. But It is going to be interesting to see this match, as we've said. I think it really is as close as it gets on paper between these two squads.
Yeah, no, it's very, very evenly matched, and this is going to be really interesting. So let's have a look at some of the other boards. We've got interesting positions on in the game between Shurich and Makhnev, as well as in a Wonders game. Now, this was a Caro-Kann where White no longer has the B pawn, but I guess it's Dariush still has over 15 minutes. What do you make of this?
Yeah, Dariush playing this instantly, and his opponent Makhnev stole a pawn, but then started thinking.
B4.
Yeah, B4.
What a move. That this can't be common. Takes and knight d2. So he opens the b file. The idea is to open that b file, get the rook to b1 with tempo, and get an initiative for that pawn, force the queen onto an awkward spot. So Makhnev, he had to take a bunch of tempo to reposition the queen in order to keep the diagonal open for the bishop. This gives Dariush a development advantage, but with the center being somewhat closed, is the development advantage going to count for something? White's got to be careful not to just end up a pawn down here for no compensation.
And one of the issues for black is this knight on b8, because where is it going? It wants to go to d7, the queen's in the way. The queen needs to keep an eye out on the pawn on b7. And if we just quickly zoom back just for a second here, down to that b4 move, instead show the move c3, which is more common, just to block the check, to create a pawn chain. Queen a6 is the typical reply. So the queen is really annoying from a6, offering a trade of queens, also making it difficult for white to castle sometimes. So that is why b4, it's more exciting. It creates an imbalance. Black is up a pawn, but delayed in development because the queen moves so many times. But that's what I guess Svirich was trying to avoid.
Yeah, this kind of sucks the queen into b4. And if black tries to do the same thing, play queen b5 here, well, that doesn't carry the same effect. Well, I think white now has the move c4, interposing with a pawn. And, then white can play rook b1. That queen starts to get really, really uncomfortable there on b5. So definitely creativity points for Dariush. He goes knight f3 in response to knight f5. But I'm not entirely sold on white's compensation here, but he's got a time advantage, and, he's probably analyzed this deeply.
Yeah, I at first also like the look of black's position, because even if you don't want the knight in the rim, it is safe and sound on the a6 square.
Bishop b7, bishop g5 has been played, again, very quickly by Dariush. It's very uncomfortable to face. You start getting annoyed the more your opponent plays quickly, because you start...
Banyak iklan lah. Chess ni banyak iklan. Potong lah dia punya komentator. Sekali iklan 30 saat.
Captain G5, and White can open up on G6, undermine Black's pawn structure. White is ahead in development by quite a few moves, already castled, all the minor pieces out. So Black really has some things to figure out. Like if you castle right now, I think you're going to get yourself into trouble. For Black, this move probably would allow an eventual knight jump to f4 and hitting the h5 pawn. It feels like Black could be in some danger on the king side.
I agree. So we're going to keep an eye as this game unfolds. What game do you want to go to next? There's a wondrous position, but I think all of the positions are kind of interesting.
I really, really, really do not like a wondrous position. So I think we can go there just because White...
Oh my goodness.
How many tempo is White up?
What did a wonder do? This looks terrible. And I'm not just talking because of these pawns. Look at White's center. Look at Black's lack of development on the king side. Okay, it was a Caro-Kann, a fantasy variation, a wonder going for sort of the Gurgen-Insa setup, which is a very reputable line. Queen b6 is the best move here. Okay, but in this position, going for knight a6, which is a very, very weird-looking move, and queen d2 Robert. Look at this. If the knight swings back to c7, what? Where's that queen going? And I think this was the subtlety that a wonder may have overlooked. He drops the queen back, but Ramzan takes this opportunity to snap off the knight, get the knight out. And if you have to play h5 in order to get the knight to h6, well, that's a terrible sign. And I wonder probably didn't want to go to knight f6 because of e5 followed by bishop h6. This is a horrific position for Black. Horrific.
I mean, you're down so many moves. Look at this. White has all three minor pieces centralized, nice and neat. Castled king. Black can't even castle, even after knight h6, because the knight will be loose on that square.
He's playing knight h6, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Do you see what's happening in this game?
This is really bad, and the only thing that I wonder maybe trying to do is play d takes e4 and the knight g4. So could a case be made for h3?
Well, I'm seeing h3.
He's played it.
Yeah.
King f8. Well, what a wonder's trying to do here is kind of castle by hand, get the king to h7, but White's got to have something. I mean, it's already bordering on lost.
Yes.
How should White handle this? Maybe knight f4 and knight back to d3.
I'm looking at knight a4 to c5.
Knight a4,
and that's the thing, is not only is Black behind development, strategically speaking, if the knight on h6, the bishop on g7 got traded for the knight on e2 and the bishop on e3, that knight sits on a dark square. It's an outpost where you cannot kick it out. So Black has so many problems here. If a Wonder Liang survives this game, I will be very shocked.
He's got to get a chess Oscar if he survives, or whatever award for surviving a position like this. But Zhal Makhanov, another name that might not be too familiar for the viewers, but a very strong blitz player, and he's sort of quietly upset a lot of GMs in a lot of tournaments. He was an FM for a long time. It's good to see him as an IM. I think his real strength might be closer to Grandmaster. So very, very poor opening play by a wonder here.
I agree. He'll need to figure out next time he gets the black piece in this position something different, because it looks suspect to say the least. So let's keep on going, I guess. Should we check out Irina Krush? She is the black pieces against Abdulmalik.
Okay. So this is the position that we have on the board right now. And it was a Rouser Sicilian, which is one of Irina's pet weapons. And okay, Abdulmalik going h4. We have a trade, f4, b5. And now Abdulmalik blasting open the center with e5. And after d5, queen e5, queen to b6. Now, generally, e5 is not that dangerous for black in the Rouser. And I really like how Irina has reacted here. I feel like black is a great position. There's a lot of threats. And that queen on e5, not feeling too comfortable, right in the middle of things.
No, it's not. You don't want to lead with your queen, because it's easy to kick that queen out. For instance, in this current position, if white plays h5, why are you pushing h1, going for an attack? Black can respond with knight g4, taking advantage of the fact that the queen is so out in the open. You can attack the queen. You try to trade the bishops with knight f2 or knight e3. Yeah, this is just a problem.
This is not great for white, and Jinsaya has to do something. Knight g4 is simply a threat here. So you could play bishop e2, maybe you should. But at the very least, black can complete her development, bishop b7. And rook a d8 is coming. This is looking really nice for Irina.
Yes, and it's not clear cut yet because white will have some attacking chances, but don't count out black's attacking chances. Once you play bishop b7, bring a rook to c8, all of a sudden they're exchange sacrificing there, pawn to b4 pushes,
right,
with the c file. Yeah, Irina off to a great start in this game.
Absolutely, and we will see what Abdulmalik does against this very problematic initiative that black has all of a sudden developed. Okay, so we have two more games that we didn't check out yet. I think Zatansky's position, Anna's position is pretty tame. It's just the Nimzo Indian. Cervantes and Asabayeva have a same-ish King's Indian, also a very kind of traditional Benoni type position, which is incredibly complex. And I play these with black. I've never been able to play such positions with white. I kind of just play f4 at the wrong time, and then I get crushed if I play these with white.
And you say f4. That was the first question I had in my mind. Is can white play f4? But then the e4 pawn is loose, right? That's the big downside.
Yeah, exactly. So this looks really good for like, well, black's pawn structure is bad, but remember the b file is open, and black has this massive pressure on the e4 pawn, which becomes very, very problematic when you combine it with the queenside pressure. So Talia going queen to d2 instead, which is a very sensible decision, kind of keeping the tension for the time being, seeing how black is going to develop her initiative first. Maybe rook b8. H5 is also very common in these positions, but Donnie, probably not here.
The pawn on b5, it was technically hanging a move ago, so instead of queen d2, not only could you play f4, you could take on b5, but there's always the risk of opening the b file, allowing black's pieces to sort of fly freely into the position and counterattack.
Yeah, something like this is probably what Talia was fearing. Obviously, you don't want to give up the b2 pawn, so... Right. Okay, so queen d2. Now a takes b5, I think, is more of a threat now that the b2 pawn is protected. Yeah, it's anybody's game here. It's hard to make any judgments about the position. I think the next 5-6 moves are going to be very, very important.
One quick thing to note is I think a lot of people will be tempted to play b5 to b4 here, but that is a strategic mistake most of the time. Then I can go back to d1 because the queen just left the square, and then the next move would be pawn to b3, knight to b2, and then you put your piece in the c4 square. You take great control of it, and that's a problem for black.
And f4 becomes a big threat. So definitely that's a great point. You do not want to release that c4 square. And h5 has been played by Asabayeva.
Wow.
Now this might seem like a brazen move to a lot of people, but no, it's actually quite typical for this line. In general, black's trying to get this pawn at h4, kick away this knight from g3, and put down that clamp on the dark squares. But there is a clear downside to this move. White's typical response here is bishop g5. And as I say that, Talia has gone bishop g5. One thing I should note, though, black in many cases can still go h4. And there's a cool tactical idea here. If you take on h4, black plays knight takes e4, exposing an attack on that bishop, counterattacking white's queen with absolute chaos on the board.
That's a great point. And so after h4, white would be best off not taking that pawn, but leaving it there for the time being, because the queen defends the bishop on g5, so the knight takes e4 tactics will not work. So a really good tactic to point out, Danya. And one thing I'll add, speaking of tactics, is with the bishop on g5, you have to watch out for f4, followed by e5. White can just ram those pawns forward, bring a knight to e4 next, push that pawn to e5, open the f file, and then knight on f6 is pinned and could be lost if black is not extremely careful.
Well, breaking news. I think we just saw a blunder in Dariush's game. Queen takes a6 was blundered by black. I just saw this happen. I saw black castling. Dariush could take on a6 and win immediately. And that is a pretty simple tactic. Will he see it? He's got to see it. Queen a6 is insta-resign.
So what Makhnev did was open up the king side, and queen takes a6, it looks like has it been played?
It has been played?
Oh, that's just...
It has been played. It's over. Now, black can try e5, but then just queen takes a7, and the game is over immediately. He takes f4, queen a8, rook takes b7, and you lose the queen. And... Makhnev cannot be happy. Now, he already had, Robert, I would argue, a pretty dubious position. That king was in the center.
Ada GM Belanda tadi. Lepas tu dia tunjuk video dia tengah berdengung kepala. Alamak, macam dengung lah lepas buat Belanda kan. Lepas tu dia, apa iklan lagi ni? Aduh, banyak betul lah iklan. Tak apa. Hang on. Let's go.
Attack, that just lost the game immediately. So I think, Danya, one of the big problems was that Makhnev just couldn't find where his pieces should go. And I thought he was doing a good job at first, but he felt some fear castling kingside, and then castling queenside was even worse.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things you just kind of panic. He probably was thinking more along the lines of rook c1, but this is a very nice puzzle rush tactic. Queen takes a6. And Dariush actually had a beautiful queen sacrifice in the preliminary stage, I think against, I think it was against Cuba or Colombia, don't quote me on that. He had a combination to win the game there. So a lot of queen sacrifices to go around for Dariush, who is rewarded for his creative play. I love this kind of play. b4, it might not be entirely sound, but in a rapid game, this kind of stuff tends to work out, and it does again in this game. 1-0, our current score.
Good preparation, good speed by him, causing his opponent to get into time trouble, and he earned the full point. So let's keep on going down the list. Many of these games look, just really interesting to my eyes. I don't even know what to choose. That game does not look so interesting. The one you just
I agree. I just wanted to point out this still looks very bad for Ramzan.
Wait, actually,
for a wonder rather.
A wonder can't move the bishop on c8 without. Well, actually, it's nowhere good to go anyway. But without dropping the a6
right.
pawn, can't move the rook on a8 because the bishop on h2 is slicing through the position all the way to b8. This is as bad as it gets.
My cursor is going from piece to piece, and I keep clicking on a piece, and then I realize it has no moves. You might have to go back to g8. This is a complete and utter unmitigated disaster. Now, the only thing I would say here, and he's played knight g8, is that sometimes these positions can be hard to convert because you can get a position where your opponent's paralyzed, but how do you actually win? Where do you actually mount the decisive invasion? And that can take a lot of time. And, if you don't strike at the right moment, the position can get a little bit more complicated. So I wouldn't count a wonder out entirely. But yeah, this is not looking good.
I would play probably like knight c1, bring the next knight up into the game. At some point, if you have b3 or d3, you want to protect the d4 pawn.
Yeah, maybe pawn c3.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel very nice. But you're right. It does require some effort, and a wonder sort of sits patiently. Maybe Zalmakhanov will overstep, and that could be an issue. But Danya, I'm also looking at Arena Crush's position. She's doing a great job with the black pieces.
Crushing it.
And the last move, Rook H3, was maybe a sad necessity because you put the rook back just for a moment there. That a move like Knight E4 is what you wanted to play, but that blunders a piece because after Bishop E4, right, Queen E3 check, and there it goes.
Yeah, so the E3 square was protected. Now, Irina, this is an important moment because if she plays Rook AC8, I think that would be inaccurate due to Knight E4. And Black is still better, obviously. I mean, this is a complete position for two results because there isn't a single threat that White could even pose on the king side, even if she had several moves in a row. That bishop on f6 is such a beautiful piece, both attacking and defending. But Irina has to find something with more pizzazz here. What could that be?
She could play it simply. Yeah, rook to d8, as I think you were about to say.
Yeah, rook f to d8 comes to mind. And if knight e4 anyway, well, probably... It's got to be something good here.
I feel like
I'm looking at tactics, but...
I think taking on e4 should be good, right?
Taking on e4, and then just rook d8.
Looks good enough to me. The bishop on f6 is so powerful.
Yeah, and if White ever plays c3 trying to blunt the bishop, well, that's inadvisable to b4. Yeah. This is... Oh, yeah. You just close your eyes here. This is not pleasant.
There's really one thing that Arena has to avoid, and it's not a tactic that White has. It would just be a mistake that Black could make, is taking on c3 in the initial position. I know that's tempting. You're doubling,
extremely tempting,
isolating your opponent's pawns from the king. But White brought the rook up to h3 not just to cover the e3 score, but to play rook g3 next and try to deliver a checkmate of her own. So that's the one thing you should probably refrain from.
Yeah, and in fact, this acts kind of like a bumper on a car. White can park the king on b2, and in a weird way, the king could end up being safer than with a pawn structure intact, as Irina does play rook ac8, and it occurred to me that after knight e4, you could simply transpose into the line we were just looking at, taking and going rook f to d8 with an amazing position. This would be a huge result if Irina managed to win with Black.
for sure. Abdulmalik's such a strong player with the Grandmaster title, and Irina just very knowledgeable in her Sicilians and doing a great job.
And a board that's, I think, quite a bit more concerning. I think the Zatansky Sadwakasova game, again, we haven't looked at it yet, but it's just been pretty colorless so far. On the other hand, that's kind of what Anna likes. She likes these positions. She squeezes them with tremendous skill. And I've seen her win a lot of these positions, which you might look at for a second and say, it's going to be a draw.
And I think when you look at this position, even material, but you look at the structure, and I'm not even talking about the king side structure where black has double pawns. A lot of people would focus their energy there. Oh, those double pawns make black's position worse. No, it's actually the queen side structure. Yeah. There's some squares that white can infiltrate. Like, for example, the c6 square. Once those bishops get traded, I could put a rook on c6. So I'm thinking about b4 right now. You put the knight to c6 at some point as well, but b4, kicking the knight, trading bishops, going rook c6, creating some concrete threats. And I really like that control of the only, I guess the d file is also open, but there's not control because there's a pawn on e3, bolstering the knight on d4, so white has full control over the other open file, the c file.
This is super nasty, and white could also contemplate a slower course of action, but I don't see a reason to procrastinate with b4. Anna going rook hd1. Okay, so obviously this pawn is untouchable due to rook g1. I don't love the look of this move, but I guess it is, it also improves white's position. I did really like b4 though, Robert. Okay, it's Dinara takes. We're going to see a trade. And basically, it's a position for two results.
Yeah, it still looks really nice for white, that's for sure. And I do like the way Dinara is playing these last couple moves, trading on c4, F5. Playing pawn to f5. You could not play pawn to f5 right away. That would have allowed the move knight takes f5 because the bishop was loose on the d5 square. So that's why she traded first. And b4, followed by infiltration c file, still does look very good for Anna Zatansky.
Absolutely. b4, f3, rook c1. White is quite spoiled for choice. And we'll see if Anna manages to squeeze a win out of this endgame. Cervantes' position, on the other hand, this one seems to be the game that Kazakhstan has to win. Something went wrong here for white in the skirmish that happened. So Talia did play f4. And she did play e5, this very classic idea. Her position looks great here. But she took on d6, Robert, and I'm really unsure about this move. You generally don't want to break up your pawns like this and open up black's bishop. Then she allowed black to take the bishop in a good version, and queen on d6 is an excellent blockading piece. This is just not looking good for white at all.
It's all down to that bishop on g7. The bishop on d7, not that great, but it's fine. The bishop on g7 is an absolute monster in combination with the rook on b8, so this is looking good for black. And down to that moment that you were mentioning after knight h7 on move 20, I think that is a really instructive moment because Levan Aronian, I've seen many of his games where he makes a move like bishop h4, and after pawn takes e5, doesn't take back, plays f5, just rams that pawn forward, opening the position. You put a knight on e4, and then you look at that bishop on g7 and say, are you really a strong piece there? No.
Right. All right, Mr.
Pawn.
King's Indian Bishop, game on. So very often black will have to, almost out of desperation, play e4, give up the pawn, but keep the bishop open. But in this particular instance, white's got f6. White's got a lot of possibilities here. And even just knight takes e4, to echo your sentiment, black's king just gets caught in the crossfire often in these positions with that pawn sticking out on h5. So this definitely would have been the way to go. But bishop h4 is not an easy move to play. It's very slow. And if you feel like you're losing control over the position, but in fact, you're the one in control if you can keep that dark squared bishop.
That's right. And the USA does have that 1-0 lead, so even if Kazakhstan wins on this board, it will be a tied match. So there is some leeway for the rest of the squad. Donna, just quickly on board 1, you mentioned the colorless nature of Zatansky against Savakasova. Here it is.
Oh, God. This is...
Yeah, I think that Renat, from the very start of this game, he was okay making a draw against Jeffrey.
Yeah. I mean, Rookie 1, he probably thought, all right, well, this is a relatively risk-free attempt if Jeffrey finds this sentence is best delivered in Russian. If Jeffrey finds...
are defending key squares. Knight on d8, defending the b7 pawn, and the knight on e7, allowing him to play rook to c8 to trade the rooks off.
Yeah, and if white goes rook c7, the knight's just going to return to d5, and we're going to see another repetition. So I think bishop f3 is likely, but yeah, then rook c8. And optically, it looks like black's pieces are very passive, but remember that, you know, black doesn't really have any targets. This knight could swing around to d6. This should be a draw. And Renat does play bishop f3. I'm expecting rook c8 from Jeffrey here, and pretty much expecting a draw to follow, and probably not too long from here.
Indeed. So, oh my god, I just sort of scrolled over a Wonder Liang's position.
Has it gotten any better?
No. Well, it's gotten better for white.
It's gotten better for white. Oh my god, look at this.
Yeah, that's just.
But you know, there's still some work that has to be done. I guess Queen E2, Rook E1. Yeah, and Queen E2 he's played. No, this is atrocious. I guess Queen H5 maybe. But the end game is still lost.
Right. It's just all of white's pieces are active and good. The bishop can't move. The rook on A8 can't move. If a Wonder holds this game, he is a magician.
Yeah, in the old days, they would resign this position. Now, of course, nobody will resign it, but in the 1950s, you know, if this happened in the Bronstein Petrosian, we might have seen resignation.
Yes. In this moment, down no material, without computers to tell you, oh, it's plus, what does it say right now? It looks like a lot.
It's +2, which is, you know, maybe not even as much as I would expect in such a position. But computers can underestimate the advantage here because, again, this comes back to what I was talking about earlier. You know, it can be hard to find exactly how you're going to win this position. You're just going to squeeze the life out of your opponent. And computers can not fully understand that that moment is coming. It can be, you know, their evaluation can be somewhat myopic.
That's right. So I don't even want to look at that position anymore. It just looks too good for white. But of course, we will keep our eye on it. I want to bring our attention, Donnie, if it's okay, to the crush game against.
Not okay.
Not okay. I didn't think so, but it's changed a lot. But Irina was able to capture on c3 at the correct
she did
moment.
capture on c3, but the reason she did it is because no, that's not where the queen is going. The queen is going to f6 and essentially fulfilling the role of that bishop and defending g7.
And now there are long-term issues for white because not only is the king a bit unsafe on b2, but the structure is so immensely favorable for black that if you traded the queens and the rooks here, it would just be looking like a winning endgame for black.
Yeah, and I'm looking at all sorts of pawn pushes. b4, e4. You could also just play rook fd8. But my idea initially was to play e4. Well, no, I don't like it as much anymore. Irina does go rook fd8. And what happens if...
Oh, Assalamualaikum.
What exactly is the idea?
You asked.
She just did.
She does it. And can you play?
Tengok chess.
Huh? Play for now.
Oh, tengah tengok chess.
Rook
c3.
Tengok gak ni.
Oh, rook c3 is good.
Mana ada rugi. Untung 146 lah tu.
Untung semacam.
Untung semacam. Alhamdulillah.
Gila rugi.
White's position seems
Tadi?
to collapse here. Queen.
Tadi kau bangun-bangun bah. Bangun-bangun tengok. Ah.
Things are bad. Good.
Gua nak tinggal 6,000. Kan? Gua nak tinggal 5,900 ni. Oh, MC ke gua nak? Oh, belum 10,000 lagi. Mimpi dah 9,000. Mimpi dah 10,000. Aduhlah. Bangun-bangun kau ingat akaun ni 10,000 tau.
Can move away, so I agree.
Faham tak? Ingat kan 9,000. Sekejap lagi. Memanglah kita start dengan 5,000 kan. Aduhlah. Suspend. Oh, kau ni. MC ke kau ni? Oh, sudahlah kan. Kau tengok. Mana? Kenapa tinggal separuh kan? Kenapa tinggal 5,000 lebih kan? Rupanya akaun start daripada 5,000. Kau punya mindset ingatkan mindset dah 10,000 faham tak? Tu gua nak boleh kurang kan. Kau MC ke kau ni? Cek-cek tak ada. Lepas tu, lah baru bangun tu kan mama-mama kan. Bangun-bangun tengok skrin. Tengok. Oh, MC dah. Aduh lah. Ha?
Mana MC ni kan?
MC dah. Belum jump tak puas hati macam tak puas hati asal MC tinggal separuh kan? Asal MC tinggal 5,000 lebih? Tengok balik. Oh, mana ada MC belum 10,000.
because look at the pawns. Two of them on
Ada lah, mindset dah 10,000 dah account.
knight d5.
Beda.
More pressure. Out for white, the king for black.
Kau
on the
follow
other hand,
tadi
the king
dia
for black
kata
on the
kena
other
tanya
hand,
Amla
stuck
pula.
over there on
Aduh.
g6. So
Oh, jap.
now probably just winning.
Jap. Nak kena tutup yang ni.
That's good news for Team USA. They need that, and also on board.
Dia nak tanya bahagian Amla pula. Macam mana?
Jap.
This also looks better for Team USA.
Ni tengah live ni bawa jap.
Bring his king into e6 next. He's gained a lot on e4 on f5.
Yeah, I think
Tanya Amina.
cases where
Oh,
Renat
okay.
kind of overpressed, he got
Jadi kita
himself
tanya.
into time pressure, and Jeffrey took the opportunity reshuffling.
Tengah live ni lagi dalam setengah jam ke habis kot.
Look at how Black's pieces
USA tengah lawan Kazakhstan. Rusia lawan Hungary.
Rook looks extremely dangerous, but
Oh, quarter final.
it's not that bad. Jeffrey going b5. Everything is protected here. I love the way Jeffrey has handled
Apa
this
eh?
position.
Boleh eh?
Right, he's gonna kick the rook. His knight is coming to e5, maybe to d3.
Ambil lagi.
One not doing anything at all.
Tak apa, kita buat jadi 10,000.
Knight moves out of the way for the open file. Looks really good for Jeffrey.
Unfortunately, I think Irina has let a lot of her advantage go. Unfortunately for Team US, that is. But yeah, I think Anna's just going to win this. She's won a pawn. And the situation is looking more and more dire by the move.
You know how I knew that Irina made a mistake? I didn't even see the board, but at the corner of my eye, guys, we can see.
You saw her reaction.
No, I saw Abdulmalik take a drink of water.
Oh,
that's your theory.
That's my thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's a Charlotte thing. I have to credit my friend Peter. But it's a contribution of Charlotte chess to our understanding of people's psychology. But why did Irina? I don't understand this. At this position,
Naiklah dulu market.
somehow
Kita nak
something was
sell
missed
ni.
here. Irina taking
Nak sell? Tok Mak bukan dah sell ke?
all in White's favor.
Right, because it's
kan?
material. Although
Tok Mak dah sell kan?
Mak kena stop lah hari ni.
Stop lah lagi. Aduh lah.
I can always put a rook up to e3.
Tak payah pasang stop. Tak payah pakai stop loss lah Tok Mak.
I'm gonna offer
Layer
a
je.
thought, but I think Black needs to be careful after Rook D1.
Oh ya Allah.
Moving your rook in and saying
Mampu
the black
lah.
can't move.
Tak ada
And
stop
there
lah.
is some beautiful tactical ideas there with the queen coming to G6, Black King being on H7. Abdulmalik kind of forced.
Jangan stop loss kita layer.
Not gonna have that avenue. But
Look at the clock, by the way.
I know that I'm telling you, these positions can go downhill for Black. There's a lot of ways I can see White getting 2 pieces on the 8th rank in the blink of an eye. I know it sounds crazy, but 4 seconds, I'm getting really concerned for Irina here. Rook D1, and she can't move her queen because of F6. I think White might be better already.
I'm with you, actually. Rook D1, easy move to make open file. Queen is stuck, as you said. And those pawns at A5 and B5. Watch out for a time that say Queen A8 check takes pawn on A5. You could lose those pawns.
Rook D3, yeah. I don't think Abdulmalik is really thinking about playing for a win here. Rook D3, there might be Rook C4 and then E4. So obviously 3 results are possible here. But a big time scramble and
Turun sell ke?
better to what it used to be. Now Rook C4
Oh,
though.
untung.
And Queen A8, there's E4. That's what I was talking about. And White will not be able to move her rook away from the 3rd rank. Will Irina find Rook C4?
Turun lah kejap.
No, she's
Turun
going
sampai sini ke kan?
5 now. And we might get some sort of an end game. Now she plays Rook C4, but now White can take on E5.
Right, and then G4 will fall, B5 will fall. It's going to be a race, and neither player has too much time to calculate. Danya, to my eyes, this looks great for White.
C4,
Push your
Irina.
C-pawn. Just go with it.
I'm shocked that Irina didn't play
Sampai
Rook
sini
C4 there.
kan?
It was a
Okay
pretty
juga.
straightforward move. Now,
Tu naik balik.
yeah, but now if
Okay,
C5,
go.
then Rook takes F5. F6 by Abdulmalik. But now G5, maybe G5.
Wow, it's funny because I really like
Yeah.
the eval bar
Rook
drops.
H4.
I think G5
I don't know
is the
what
move.
the G5. Okay, and then Black gets 2 connected passers. It's still anybody's game. Rook H4 by Irina. She does go for this move. But now Jansai can go King C3, or she can.
Alah, potong betul lah iklan ni. Bodoh iklan. Geram aku. Orang dah nak 10 saat dah habis tu. US lawan Kazakhstan. Aduh, potong betul lah iklan ni. Geram ni geram. Baru nak tengok macam mana dong. Laju-laju kan. Dah habis dah lah. 30 saat.
should White
Huh.
bring the king
Ha,
up?
kau tak habis lagi?
Bring the rook
I
back
guess
to
so.
defend against the pawns, and bring the king up to d4, to d5, to d6, and so on.
By the way, Anna has won her game, so that's 2-0 our current score. And Asabayeva's about to win, so it's going to be 2-1.
And a wonder.
And oh my God, Jeffrey's about to lose. Jeffrey blundered something.
No
oh my God,
way!
Jeffrey what?
unbelievable.
What?
Jeffrey's losing. Jeffrey just resigned.
Huh?
Oh my gosh.
So let's maybe finish this game, and then I'll walk everybody through what happened. I have no idea what happened.
I just saw he blundered a rook.
He
didn't see his
blundered a
rook was
full rook. Oh my
Oh,
God.
mana?
The current score is 2-1. And a wonder has lost. It's 2-2. It's going to be 3-2. This is a must win for Irina.
No way. And Team USA was looking
What
so
a
good.
turnaround and just a meltdown here on some of these boards. But this is still anybody's game. Irina has 2 passed pawns, probably losing though because Abdulmalik has another C1, which is going to replace the one that's taken by Black's rook. This is losing. This is completely winning for White, Robert.
Yeah, just king d7. You get the rook has sacrifice to the pawn. Then you push the next c pawn.
Unbelievable here. What seemed to be at the very least a draw is going to be a crushing loss.
Oh my gosh.
C4.
Cancaya.
Jansaya
Cancaya kan. Cancaya Abdul Malik.
I guess king g7 just still goes c4.
X.
King E5.
Cancaya. Cancaya.
No, but that's actually
Cancaya.
pretty clever.
Kazakhstan.
Six.
X.
Yeah,
X itu.
If C4 then King
Z. Zan saya.
Whoa, King D4.
X pula.
Oh, that was a really
Ada blind spot dah kat skrin.
Oh, King B6 and now the
Tenang
pawn.
blind spot dekat skrin nampak tu.
Open.
Ha,
C5 is going
nampak
to be
besar.
winning.
blind spot.
c5 is
Skrin lama dah, skrin rosak.
because
Be-
you
Stream tak nampak, live tak nampak. Tak apa. Kawin nampak skrin cukup nyaman.
They're going to promote at the same time.
just get a queen, but I think Black had some
Esa hua.
instead of g3 there, she started with pawn h2.
Irina, yeah. Irina completely lost the thread of this game.
Yeah, now
And-
it's just losing.
The last hope for US is Cervantes' game, but she's down a piece. And the first match goes in Kazakhstan's favor. What an incredible performance by a lot of these Kazakh players. Shah Mahanov with a crushing.
Zan je lah.
Let's
Kau mati.
debrief everybody on what
That's
happened
enough.
in Jeffrey's position. Oh my lands.
Right there.
He's got a great position. He's basically better now. Go rook d7. You won't lose this game. Guess what Jeffrey does? He takes the knight.
Ha?
Just missed it.
What
The
knight?
rook was under attack on d8.
Yang tadi dah biar kalah.
Shows you
Kazakhstan kalah.
everybody
Yes.
is human. The number next to their name might be 2729 or 2851 or whatever it is. This stuff happens when you've got a time scramble. You've got
Kazakhstan 2, USA 2.
unbelievable turnaround, and obviously Jumabayev just takes all of the pawns.
Wow. And he wins that game, of course.
And
the
Irina
one
loses.
Hungary 2,5, Rusia 3,5. Oh, power Rusia.
about Irina's game, it felt like she lost the thread somewhere, and then Jansaya did a great job of securing the full point. And for Bivisara, she continues to amaze. Such a strong player. She wins with the black piece. Are they still
And
going?
this one, she can just make a draw. Now, let me ask you a question. If Kazakhstan wins the first match 3.5, 2.5, and then the US wins 6-0 or 5-1, it doesn't matter, right? They're still going to tiebreak.
Like tennis, goes to tiebreak. If you win
Got it.
6-1 and then lose 4-6, still one set to one set. So it's
Now, this is a famously losing position, I'm pretty sure. Even though the H pawn is the wrong color, what you have to do is get White's king into the corner, and then force the G pawn forward so that you can take it en passant with HG. The H pawn's going to have moves, so it's not going to be stalemate.
that's right.
You're going to see this unfold very shortly.
Yeah, actually, you were saying it. I was like, hey, this is exactly what's going to happen.
Yep. King is going to come to D2 and then E1. The bishop is going to reposition itself on F2 in order to give the G pawn a move. Then you stalemate White's king and force that G pawn forward, which gives Black the winning idea. Bishop H2 is fine. But now King E2, it's a little bit. She should have moved her king in first.
Yeah, I guess you can always go back.
Of course, of course. And this is purely cosmetic, because even if this ends in a draw somehow, it still is a win here.
That's right. All right. So, and part of this might be Bivisara gaining time with the clock. Getting nervous, even though the result does matter, you still have all of the game behind you, all that tension, and so you're trying to get that victory. And will she find? She has to. Yeah, there it is. She got it.
Yep, bishop f2. The king is stalemated. Pawn has to push, and then you take it. Now, I really think, I wonder he's going to have to step up to the plate. I mean, that kind of opening, you can't allow that to happen because you're lost in 7 moves. And credit to Jean Mahanov, he just did not let him go. That was a big game.
Yeah, and that's the thing with these team events. You and I both have played in them, whether it's the Pro Chess League or even for the US team. You get in these moments where you look at either your own board or your teammates' boards, and the game just looks over as it's getting underway, and that puts so much pressure on your teammates because if your position is bad after move 7, instead of just being like, all right, I can focus on my game and play my best moves, like, wait, we're down 1-0, I need to win. However, Dariush won very quickly for Team USA, so that kind of balanced it out. It just, you look at the boards, Dariush was the heavy rating favorite against his opponent Makhnev, and Wonder was also the favorite, so that 1-1 tie was good for Kazakhstan because we mentioned at the start of the show, Danya, the women for Kazakhstan. What was their record in this round? They lost. Anna Satansky beat Savakasova, but Abdumalik gets a win. Baby Sara gets a win. 2-1 for the women and the junior girls board.
Yeah, it appears that Kazakhstan's in great form. On many boards, they're in better form. So, the U.S., they have to win this second match, and they have their work cut out for them. They absolutely do. They're going to have to step it up on the bottom boards, but that's why we're here. Anything can happen. This could have gone either way. So we hope that, put off your work meetings or, keep your work notes open on one screen and keep the games open on another. I'm a great influence, I know. In any case, Robert, I think we're going to go on a break, but this is going to be a fascinating conclusion here to the semis.
For sure.
To the quarterfinals.
Alhamdulillah, dah habis dah. Yes, okay. Nanti kita sambung lagi insyaAllah besok next round.